the September 27th Product Analytics PM UX Weekly. It looks like we have a couple of follow-ups from last week's action items. First up on the agenda. Rob, thanks for creating the issue to document design decisions, and thanks to you and Jan for already starting to populate that. It's going to be super helpful as we transition with a new product designer starting hopefully soon. Let's see. And then the visualization designer MVC, just wanted to say thanks, Rob, for creating the epic. I think we have it as a item later on down below, but wanted to make sure I said that out loud. So any other follow-ups from last week's to-dos? All right, moving on to, oh, sorry. No, okay. Moving on to latest prototype or results of research, not formal research per se, but wanted to share. I had a chat with a customer yesterday. The impetus or the reason for the call was that they got excited about product analytics dashboards and customizable dashboards, not knowing what they were or what they contained. What they're looking for was really DORA metrics. And so we pointed them at Visualization Designer. They did like the customizable dashboard because I walked them through that demo real quick and showed them, hey, I could pull DORA metrics and usage metrics for that same app, which resonated a little bit. But a more interesting use case I thought was better visualization of audit events. So I'll share that with the team for the audit events. But more good validation that customers want customizable views of their data, whether it's data that's coming from their usage of GitLab or their applications. So just wanted to share that with the team, and I'll share the recording. I just didn't get to it yesterday. We have a Zoom call that I'll put into Slack so everyone can watch it. All right, so moving on then to, oh, sorry, Dennis has a comment on that. If you want to verbalize, I'll type.
Yeah, thank you. I was trying to type furiously before I go into turtle space of when I try to talk and type at the same time. But I know compliance is working on getting audit events into ClickHouse, which is like a performance game, as well as like I think would help support. Like I guess, would it be a good opportunity to kind of like, you know, we've got to optimize looking at the dashboard, customizable dashboards. Is there potential for compliance to look at this as well as like, okay, you know, you've got audit events, your existing functionality, and viewing that, you're working on getting this into a much more performant database. What are your thoughts about potentially like building some type of visualization that we could eventually plug that into as like an available option for dashboards?
Yeah, I think it's worth a conversation. I'll figure out who the right PM is for audit events.
It's Heim.
Is it Heim? Is it an optimized feature?
Oh no, okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. It's not Heim. It's sorry. I'm gonna be quiet. I don't know who it is actually.
We'll figure out who it is. Yeah, I think that definitely the right next step for customizable dashboards for other bits of data is to do like what Optimize did with DORA and turn their visualizations or turn those charts into something that can be a visualization. I'm thinking with Chaim, or talking with Chaim and Sasha specifically more broadly about what's the long-term vision for customizable dashboards for data coming from GitLab or outside of GitLab, and how we can apply a common set of filters to that and a unified user experience to it. And we'll loop product design into that soon, but we're really just thinking more product vision, less nuts and bolts. But if we give folks that vision, then they can build visualizations that will work in a customizable dashboard framework across the app, which I think would be really nice and a great, feature set that we can plug into that ultimate tier. So yeah, I'll figure out who that is. I'll put that as an action item for myself.
Nice.
Cool. And then moving into review of any questions about the upcoming implementation. I dropped in the things that were honestly just top of mind yesterday and links to those. But usage quota MVC, there's a lot lined up in 16.6 for this. So I wanted to start the conversation. We're already well into 16.5. Make sure that we have the design that we need or answer any text or other UX questions about that. And Rob, it looks like you have the first comment there.
Yeah, so we within the front end issues applicable within that MVC, we do have some like ideas on what we could do, but we don't have any formal design. So ideally, we would have some kind of mock-up to go on, just to formalize our ideas for this initial approach. And and obviously get Lorena involved to make sure that the text makes sense as well within the context of what we're trying to do, because we all know we're terrible at writing text and we need all the help we can get. So yeah, and I haven't done any kind of implementation plans yet either on that. Me and Dennis were actually just talking about this, so I'll be having a word with Jan about whether he's able to pick this up next if he's got availability, because it sounds like I might need to help out with some infra stuff towards starting next week.
We had put together a really ugly wireframe somewhere. There it is.
I had
Yes,
seen
you did.
something, but I think was it just like a screenshot of the current pipelines page?
Yeah, it was snippets of the screenshot of the pipelines page, and then just plugged into preview and some other data put on top of it to show what it would look like for product analytics instead of pipelines. It's attached in the design management to the issue that was promoted to an epic, so we can pull it back in and start from there. Does it seem reasonable to start with that, put that into whatever is the right MVC issue here?
Yeah, Max has just started working on the back-end GraphQL implementation of this. So we have a strong idea of what that API is going to look like from a front end and design perspective. We know what data we're going to get. So from that, we can get a strong idea of what we can implement for the MVC at least.
Okay.
Ideally, I want to try and reduce as much new UX as possible and just reuse existing components where we can, at least until we get a proper UX designer in, because at least we know that those components have had some kind of input from somebody else to make sure that it's following at least some kind of consistent design language.
Yeah, I think that everything that I wireframed is available in Pajamas and is existing in the usage quota page already today. We shouldn't have to design anything from scratch. I think we can reuse existing components. I'm gonna I'll add that wireframe to the epic description, and from there we can move it where we need to move it. If that works for you, Rob.
Yep.
And yeah, since you're going to be picking this up.
Yep.
Excellent. Thumbs up. All righty. I'm going to do that now before I forget. And while I'm doing that, Ms. Jackie, you go ahead.
Yeah, I just made a note to myself on that action item. So we'll see if either of the fulfillment designers have some bandwidth, maybe like an hour or something, and then they can take a look at the design that you did, James, and just see if anything stands out to them. Okay. Since they work on that page a lot.
So I basically made a copy paste and change some wording from products or from pipeline. So
yeah, I feel like a quick review, and with their background knowledge, they may know if there's something that's like some gotcha or something, but hopefully it's just like straightforward.
Yeah.
Reuse.
I've tried to avoid all of the problems that we made initially on usage quota with pipelines and jump ahead a little bit, but we know that there's still some gaps of data that we just don't have, and we don't know how users are going to use it yet. So there's some unknowns, but we'll get it sorted. Cool.
And more broadly, I know there's a discussion around the current usage quota sort of structure of the page and tabs, and whether that's still the right way to go, or if there's an alternative structure that we should be taking place. But I've had a broad agreement that that's a separate issue that doesn't need to affect this one.
That's totally separate, yeah. And it's more longer term. Like, we'd like to do a review of that whole page with the addition of quite a few tabs and decide if this is the right way to scale it or not. But it'll be a quarter or something before we can do that anyway.
Out of curiosity, I know when I wrote the very rough versions of the issues for usage quota, like we were looking at transfer egress, like or like that ongoing initiative. Is that like something we still want to reference or look at all, or is that its own thing now? Like we're not factoring that into our direction for usage quota.
Sorry, can you say that again? I was reading something and not paying attention when I should have.
Yeah, I was referencing like there's an ongoing initiative with like transfer egress, which had some like some design mocks in terms of like what they wanted to do. I don't know, like is that at all like in play with what we're kind of looking for doing in usage quota, or are we just kind of moving going forward with like what's actually existing and built today with like pipeline usage?
I did it completely without knowledge of any sort of other design and just based off of what we had done previously or what I had done previously pipelines.
Got it.
There are a few different areas like that would require new tabs. Like I think transfer, the one you mentioned is one, and then
yeah,
there's the like AI add-on for code suggestions, and then there's potentially a few others that I know of, and hopefully they'll all follow the same patterns.
Yeah,
but there are some small differences between them, so that's why I'm like, the fulfillment team will just have to take a look at it at some point.
For sure. Yeah, I guess my point was that like we have a number of different schools of thoughts kind of doing similar things but differently, and so I was wondering if like there's any collection of that we can leverage with the teams that have more design capacity.
If other teams have mocks already and they're using existing like UI patterns and components like GitLab UI stuff, etc., and you know of the issue that they're in, feel free to, or at least note it in the issue that these other things exist, and we'll try and track those down. Just you'll give good examples of what's possible or when we're doing our own mock-up.
Yeah, I'll try to hunt it down. Something happened to my browser history where like nothing's showing up anymore. So
cool. All right, then moving into Visualization Designer. Thank you everyone for getting all the issues and epics and the mocks created. Jan, you have the first comment there.
Yeah, it seems based on the discussion thread, the latest one there, that we're all pretty much in agreement. There's been some feedback in terms of small changes we can make in terms of layout and text on Rob's MVC designs. But yeah, if we're all in agreement, I just wanted to make doubly sure that we're good to start with the implementation and then potentially development on phase 1, which is the MVC. Things shaking heads.
Other than updating the small text that James has suggested, Lorena's pretty much giving it a green light. We're not changing too much from the proof of concept necessarily. We're just generally tidying it up to make it feel slightly more polished, so we can get it out to users and start getting their feedback on how they want the direction to go. So I'm more than happy for us to start doing the implementation planning and look at bringing, if we're running low on tasks, bringing the first phase into this milestone or the next.
Initial MVC looks good to me.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing it for the first time, but I trust everyone's judgment. So yeah, if it's
I wouldn't trust mine.
Well, too bad. But if it's not too far of a departure from the proof of concept, then it looks good to me. So
I think it's mostly wording changes, rearranging the columns so that they make a little bit more sense. It's not back and forth.
Yeah.
And some language cleanup. I am in favor of fixing or getting the click events included so that we can see those and start to see some of the metadata or the extra data associated with that tracking. I think we might pull support for querying unstructured events out of the MVC as a separate effort. I don't think that we have to wait to ship it or wait for that to ship this iteration is what I'm trying to convey.
So right now our current idea is to have that as stage 0 before we release it out of the feature flag to the people that are testing or in the beta for product analytics. So are you now saying that we could release to the people using product analytics without that custom events feature for now?
Yeah, I think we had talked last week about that could be a parallel path. It shouldn't have to hold up the visualization designer, especially while we're in the beta. We can convey that, hey, your custom events aren't going to be queryable yet because of the shift from Jitsu to Snowplow. We're working on the best way and a first iteration to give you those custom events in a way that's visualized. And so trying to sort through the viability of especially the querying of those things.
Okay, in that case, I'll move that out of the MVC, and in fact, the post MVC is its own tangential thing, because that custom events issue is going to turn into an epic. It's got so many moving parts. So it can be its own tangential task. It also means if we need to, we can feature flag it off separately while we're developing towards that. Do we still want the link clicking events to be part of the MVC, just to be clear on that? So that's an existing feature that doesn't currently work. So we wanted to fix that before we release.
Yeah, I think when you and I talked yesterday or earlier this week that you had
I've got a proof of concept. Yeah, that mostly works. I've got an annoying ClickHouse SQL issue that I'm trying to figure out, but I haven't touched it in about 48 hours.
No worries. Yeah, I think getting the link clicking metric back in is going to be a good part of that as well. If we need to split that out and we do the UI stuff all together and then we fix the link clicking, like I'm fine with that sort that iteration plan that works for me, or that phasing plan. But I think a good iteration is the UX improvements, and then a nice new feature is going to be put back the support for the custom events. Once we get that sorted out of how do we store those, how do we query those, what are the performance hits of true querying of that, what MVC towards that might look like. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that last week, that's my bad.
No, it's fine. There's a lot of moving parts in this, so I appreciate the clarification and clarity.
Cool. Jackie, I think we accidentally or on purpose worked in a majority of the feedback that we got from Kevin as well about visualization designer, but I can go back and look at his UX scorecard and look at the feedback and see if we've worked that in. I know part of his feedback was around the ordering of things, where you were going back and forth between columns, picking something from one side, jumping to the other, then looking at the middle. So I think we've addressed that big part, but I can go back and look at some of the other stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go back and take a look, but if you don't do that, I think it's fine. Like I have a list of things for the new designer to take a look at. And one of them is for them to take a look at that scorecard and the recommendations and see if they're still relevant. So that would be a good first task for them anyway, like to get oriented. So if you're okay with waiting, we could wait.
Yeah, that works for me. Awesome. All right. And then I think that we've already covered everything in the last bullet item, or the last agenda item, with the previous two agenda items. Things that are already scheduled, 16.6 are all usage quota thing. And then we have some things that are not yet scheduled that we'll probably need some design on or in a ready for design phase. So those can sit and wait, I think, for a while longer. But everybody wants to, I'll share my screen so we can look at the list together. We have, I believe all of these are usage quota. And the rest of these are so far unscheduled, sitting in the backlog. Is there anything we want to call out that needs work sooner than later?
No, I think all of this is more or less covered by the usage quota MVC for the most part.
And then for the unscheduled issues, is there anything we need to take a look at?
I'd want to call out one that's not yet existing, but how we handle filters kind of like temporarily, because I think with the user ID type and things like that, we'll have more things to be able to filter by,
Yeah,
but we really only discussed it. And James, I know you and I were talking about like, what if we use these tokenizers existing in like the issue list or the milestone board as like an existing pattern to leverage that. But
I think, did I? Yeah, we have an issue for adding tokenized filters later
okay.
on. And that's part of what we called out in this issue to add the user ID type.
Right. Because I think we're
as
going to use a
checkbox.
toggle to start, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, just as we eventually start like customers and I know we will want more as well, but like having to, instead we don't have a kitchen sink of toggles and drop downs, need a more scalable way of handling that. But not something that I think we need to worry about now. It's just as we look at issues like funnel visualization, I think filtering is a contender in that time frame. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just a heads up so that everyone's aware, when working with tokenized search, we should be very deliberate and I guess conservative about where, or let me say the reverse of conservative about like where that line is when we start implementing it, because technically it does add quite an overhead and it is difficult to maintain. From previous experience working on the audit events one, it is a very tricky component to work with, and not by any fault, just because of how it works and how much freedom it gives to the user to interact with.
No, for sure. We'll definitely want to be very like strict with what is actually available to use in the tokenizer. I definitely don't imagine us just like passing through what Cube allows you to filter or anything like that. Like we have to be very deliberate about that. So it may just be that it's just like in terms of like how we would want to handle that with the current, like knowing that we don't have the capacity to like do research into new patterns and figuring out what the future solution is something we can evaluate. But yeah, we definitely want to, regardless of which direction we go into, we want to make sure that we are in complete control of what the user can actually filter by, because it's not only just from a user experience point of view, but also from a performance point of view. If a user adds 20 filters, like what does that look like in terms of query performance? And or if we have an attribute that, for example, we have to still figure out with custom events or unstructured events, like requires searching into a JSON blob in a column, and that completely just falls apart in terms of query performance, then we don't want to make that available yet. So yeah, but thanks for calling that out. Yeah,
we should also make sure from a UX point of view, obviously we're not the only ones use customizable dashboards now, and not all groups need all filters for their user experience. So I mean, having a tokenized search will actually make that slightly simpler, excluding certain tokens, like injecting them in based upon the usage. But at the same time, it might, we'll need to make sure we loop in other groups as well.
It could result in a confusing UX where all dashboard pages look the same, but suddenly you can't filter by certain tokens, because not all visualizations at this moment are compatible or respect the filters. So our solution currently is to just have a hard-coded list of these are dashboards where the filters should not be rendered and respected.
Yeah.
The VSD is the current example, and that's probably going to expand. So yeah, we'll also need to think of like we'll basically need to reach out and probably form some sort of working group in the end between like all the different groups that are contributing to and working on customizable dashboards to try and figure out what is our unified approach on how we handle filters, the UX, the technical, the development side of it, like everything.
How
I can
many
start
other
that by
groups
taking
using? Oh, sorry.
So I could start that by taking inventory of what search is available. I think the not low-hanging fruit, but the first things that'll be converted are things under the analyze menu, like secure would probably come later, and figure out what is there, what different visualizations use different filters. And we can work a longer term vision of that into that customizable dashboard vision to set, here's how we envision filtering working for customizable dashboards. So I think that would be a good first step, and then we can talk about working group as we expand into that. Sorry,
Sounds
Jackie, I
good.
cut you off. What were you gonna say?
That's okay. Yeah, I was just gonna ask if we have a good idea of who all is using these patterns.
So far, it's just us and Optimize for the value stream dashboard, I believe. I haven't
Okay.
heard of any other development of customizable dashboards or
Okay,
schema-driven dashboards yet.
but we
I'm trying-
anticipate more groups.
Yeah, ideally we
Yes.
would like all groups to like building dashboards to use this, or at least have the option to use this. As part of
see.
like consolidating dashboards in general, because part of the working group we had earlier this year was like, we've got 30 different dashboards and they all look different. And then, potentially like I mentioned earlier, like maybe compliance could leverage this, and then observability definitely has some opportunities to use this as well. So it's just two of us for now, the two groups for now, but it could expand.
Okay.
Double soon.
Cool. Well, with that, we are just a little past GitLab time. Thank you everyone for the discussion. I'll upload this to our Unfiltered channel for everybody else. All right, have a great rest of your day.
Hi, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Here.